Hello and good evening. Welcome to Anupali. I am happy to welcome you here once again. Thank you so very much for joining me this Sunday. This past week, your government held several meetings to advance our foreign relations. On Monday, I convened a virtual bilateral meeting with His Royal Highness, Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Deputy Supreme Commander of Bahrain. The meeting advanced discussions on finalizing diplomatic relations between Dominica and Bahrain and explored topics of mutual interest such as climate change, infrastructural development, tourism, and information technology. I also met with His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, on Friday for regional discussions on the green recovery and tackling climate change and biodiversity loss. The meeting discussed specific ways the Commonwealth can demonstrate its commitment in a time of global crisis and create opportunities to work in partnership to accelerate economic recovery and drive global action on issues of sustainable development. The discussion also focused on priorities for economic recovery and sought to identify opportunities within the Commonwealth that can drive a sustainable future for member states. We look forward to furthering these talks as we continue to be challenged by the many social, physical, and economic risks associated with climate change and now this global pandemic. This week, I also participated in a meeting hosted by the President of Bolivia on the occasion of International Mother Earth Day, which promoted the need to advance international commitments of protection and harmonious coexistence with the environment and the integration of our people. The objective of such discussions is to create a greater awareness about our use of the Earth's resources and how we can make significant changes that will benefit our children and determine the very future of our countries. Such discussions are particularly beneficial for small island states like ours, which usually bear the brunt of the effects of climate change. I welcome these fora, which provide me with the opportunity to make a case not only for Dominica, but also for our sister states with similar challenges. As you are aware, our brothers and sisters in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines are continuing to contend with the impact of the eruption of La Soufrière volcano. The volcano erupted on April 9, and activity is ongoing with periodic eruptions. Dominica stands in absolute solidarity with the people of our sister island. We have offered a safe haven here in Dominica for Vincentian nationals wishing to evacuate and will provide support in other tangible ways. On today's program, I will speak with the Prime Minister of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, about the well-being of his people, the volcano's impact, and his outlook for the future. I am honored that Dr. Gonsalves has taken time off, what is a very busy schedule for him, to speak with us this evening, and I am happy to welcome him to Anupali. Comrade, good evening and welcome to Anupali.
Good evening to you and the people of Dominica. I'm happy to see you, my brother.
Thank you very much. Anupali means let's talk. You know, I know you are monolinguistic in Saint Vincent. But I'm sure my dear friend Eloise, and I pray for her continued recovery. And I am sure my dear friend, your mother-in-law, would be able to tell you what Anupali means, but I will help you in that regard as well.
Yes, well, thanks very much. Well, you know, the book of James addresses let's talk face to face.
Thank you. Comrade, thank you for being here. I know you know I have been through a similar challenge of disasters, and I know how important your time is. So I really appreciate you making the time to speak with us here in Dominica, and of course the wider region on what's taking place in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, given all that has happened in the last 2 weeks, how are you and how are the people of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines coping under these circumstances?
Well, first of all, let me express thanks to you and the government and people of the Commonwealth of Dominica for your assistance thus far, for the generosity and solidarity. The Dominican people have decided to open their homes to Vincentians from the red zone and parts of the orange zone who wish to be evacuated to Dominica. And you yourself, your government has decided to take a certain number of persons if they're so minded. And that's a tremendous act of solidarity and generosity. That's how the Caribbean family responds. I also want to thank you and the government and the people of Dominica for the material supplies which have been sent thus far, especially water in the very early period when our water system was knocked out by the explosive volcanic eruptions. And of course, I thank you and the government and people of Dominica for your financial contribution. Even though I know you're having difficult times, the noblest act of solidarity is not to give from the abundance or the surplus that you may possess, but to give from the little that you may have. That's the biblical story of the widow's mite. And we are very, very grateful. So first of all, I want to establish that. In relation to the specific question that you asked about how we are feeling, the spirit of solidarity is very high in the country, among the people. There is a sense that people are looking out for one another. There are a lot of volunteers to help in doing a number of different things. And the response by ordinary people to open their own homes, in addition to people who volunteer in the shelters, or there are 88 of them, the friends and family and strangers open their houses to take people in. And it's absolutely amazing. So there's a good spirit. Of course, you would expect that you have occasional dissonance, but we don't worry about that. Things are such with people that they're saying, look, we're going to see this thing through. We're going to rebuild better. We're going to rebuild stronger. We have our social solidarity, which is critical to this particular phase of humanitarian relief. And then the next stages of recovery and reconstruction. Without the social solidarity, we wouldn't be able to do anything optimally successfully. Whatever the support we get from our regional Caribbean family or the global community. So this is basically fundamental. That solidarity is going to be tested in the weeks and months ahead because it's a long haul, and I don't have illusions about it. But we have a good ground game. Our National Emergency Management Organization, we have good structures, good systems, and they're improving all the time. The United Nations agencies have come in. The CARICOM agencies have come in. RSS, CDEMA, CARICOM Disaster Response Unit, the OECS is involved, CAFA is involved. So with all that kind of a support, we are holding it together. Global NGOs like the World Central Kitchen, Red Cross, Lions, Rotary. And as to myself, well, I'm an ancient warrior. So I'm holding, I have to be strong for everybody, though it's not easy.
Well, Prime Minister, I have known you for quite a while now, and I believe that Saint Vincent and Grenadines is very fortunate to have you at the helm now. I mean, with the profoundness of your experience and your vast outreach, I believe that that the people can sleep much better, knowing that you're the Prime Minister of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, and so, you know.
Well, I'm grateful for that, for what you have said. But all Caribbean colleagues, CARICOM colleagues, and those in ALBA have been very, very helpful. Of course, in the wider global community also. It's not an easy thing to have to house and feed 7,000 persons who are in the shelters currently. 88 shelters, mainly schools, but also some churches. Then we have another 7,000 or thereabouts in private homes who have registered, but there are more persons in private homes who have not registered. And then in the orange zone, that is the zone just below red zone on both the northeast and the northwest, communities which were not asked specifically to evacuate. Of course, some have gone into shelters, but a huge number of them still remain. I'm talking about the orange zone. And they have difficulties in coping. For instance, the water went for them also. The water went for everybody. So we had to transport water also for them. Awesome. And we also have to provide food supports also for them and all the other basic services. So it's a monumental task. So you're talking really, I mean, on a daily basis in the shelter, we have to provide 21,000 meals. 7,000 at breakfast, 7,000 at lunch, 7,000 at dinner. Then we have to provide, and we have provided already, in excess of 6,000 packages for persons who are in homes, and also those who are in the orange zone who have not gone to live with people. Because if you have 7,000 persons in registered in homes, you're talking about 250 homes almost. And those packages are for once every 2 weeks. So it's a monumental exercise. And then a challenge, a real challenge, is that of COVID. Because you have large groups of people coming together in shelters and more persons living in homes. The risk of an outbreak is enhanced as a consequence of so many more persons living together. You're not going to have the physical distancing that you'd have normally in a home with 3 persons or 4 persons. And a further challenge is that the shelters, the issues touching and concerning health and sanitation, I mean, toilet facilities, for instance, which were designed for 150 school children, let's say in a school, who are there for just 5 hours during the day and have 1 meal there, as against 150 adults who are there for 24 hours. So you can just
do the maths, yeah, understand.
See what the kind of problems. And then the port is stretched because the port has to accommodate all the material which is coming in. Not only the large supplies which are coming in for the government, through the government to maintain all of this. And of course, supermarkets are bringing in more food. Then packages, individual packages which have started to come. And you would have had experience like that in Dominica, making the port clog up at this stage, I'm asking people the best way to help their friends and families is to send money to them where they can go to the supermarkets and buy things. You know, we have no charges for any of the packages coming in, and nothing, no handling charges, no duties, nothing at all. But I'm just advising what is better from a management standpoint at the port at this time. Yeah. Normally at Christmas time, when we have what we call the duty-free barrels, we'll get about 20,000. And you're familiar with that too. Just imagine you having that coming in addition to all the large shipments which are coming, supplies of one kind or another. It's a phenomenal task to manage. And then the security question. We have RSS personnel on the ground, as you are aware. And we have some Defense Force personnel from Trinidad and Tobago. Even though we don't have a security problem, every disaster, as you also know, holds in somewhere along the line a security problem, or invariably you have a security problem. And then we have to manage people not going back into the red zone. Because when there's a lull, people want to go back and take the ash off their houses, try and clean up as best as they can. But this is the time when they can lose lives. I mean, thus far, we haven't had any deaths or any injuries resulting from the volcano, which indicates the song process in which we have moved people on the western side. We've moved a lot of them by sea, and on the windward side, mainly by road, though we moved some also by sea on the windward side, the Atlantic side. So all told, I'm painting a picture for Dominicans to see what happens with an eruption. You know what happens with a hurricane. You have been hit, two of them very badly back to back in recent times, in living memory. But this is what is facing us. And you live in the uncertainty as to when it is erupting again. Yeah. 3 days ago, it had another eruption, another explosive eruption. Fortunately, the last few eruptions, there have been several of them, they have not had the extent of the energy. But in some cases, you had pyroclastic flows, because rather than going up in the sky, in the atmosphere, the material comes over the volcano and runs down on the western side, which is the lower lip of the crater. Fortunately, those pyroclastic flows have not gone into areas of human habitation. But the big danger now on the eastern side, in the valleys, the river valleys on the northeastern side, now that some rains are starting to come and the impending, the looming hurricane season, and we're going to get rains as from June, what they call mud flows, which are added to the normal kinds of landslides which we have. Mud flows with stone and ash, because bear this in mind, over 100 million cubic meters of material came out from the volcano. Not all of that landed on Saint Vincent. Some went to sea, and of course, given the winds and the height it went to, a lot of it also went to Barbados. St. Lucia got some, Grenada got some. So you can just imagine the state of desolation in the red zones. I mean, I went down yesterday down on the western side, the northwestern side. I mean, just like on the eastern side. thick with ash all about. And the trees are all gone. Agriculture is shot through. Animal husbandry is practically no more. And out of the 8,000 farmers, registered farmers, what you have across the country, about 3,700 of them come out of the red zone. And then there are others in the orange zone, which are badly affected too. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. But it's going to take a long time to come back on the psychosocial issues. But despite all those things, and I give that picture, despite all of these things, the people are bonded together in social solidarity. And this Caribbean civilization is amazing. And as I put it, with two biblical references, that on this dangerous road to Jericho, metaphorically, there's been an outpouring of good Samaritans. And at the same time, taking the lesson from a book of Lamentations. We are not Lamentations people. Morning by morning, new mercies we see. All that we need, thy hand has provided. Great is thy faithfulness. So it's amazing, despite all the challenges.
Now, comrade, you launched this week a global appeal fund.
Yes.
How has been the initial reaction, and what exactly is the target here?
Well, the target for the Global Appeal Fund by the UN is $29.2 million US. That doesn't come anywhere close to the hundreds of millions of dollars what you're going to require for this operation, both in the humanitarian and very much so the recovery and reconstruction. But the UN agencies consider that for them to provide assistance, World Food Program, the UNICEF, the people involved in clearing, advising and getting equipment to clear the ash. To do all of those things would cost a significant amount of money. That's far more. I mean, you require far more than that to do the operation I'm talking about. On a monthly basis, a humanitarian, it is the Ministry of Finance has a rough estimate, and all these things are rough estimates, of requiring about $15 million EC on a monthly basis to do the humanitarian work. In 4 months, that's $60 million. That's nothing other than just basic humanitarian and social supports. Then you're going to have to deal with housing. You have to deal with money for animal husbandry, and for agriculture. Well, the UN appeal has some of that in it. So UN appeal is largely humanitarian plus one or two other little things about recovery. But I haven't spoken to Didier Tribok, the UN rep for the Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. He went back, I guess, early in the week. I will get a report from him as to how that is going. But that is without prejudice to what we have to do elsewhere, bilaterally, with the Caribbean Development Bank, with the World Bank. At the moment, we made two decisions, Roosevelt. A first decision about 3 years ago, and a decision which we made late 2019, early 2020. In relation to 3 years ago, we established a contingency fund. We put on a 1 percentage point on top of the VAT, call it a disaster levy. It's the only easiest way to have collected that. less administrative infrastructure and the like. I put on a $3 tax per room per night, calling it a resilience levy for visitors. Well, we haven't administered that for the whole period of COVID because it didn't make any sense to do that. But up to last year, we had reached $50 million with the contingency fund. We spent about 10 last year in relation to COVID. So we have at the moment about $40 million in the fund, and we are using some of that for our humanitarian effort. And we took a decision. You know, when we had gotten some IDA monies, which we had negotiated, International Development Association monies from the World Bank, 40 million. And you know, you go with them to program it. Well, we programmed 20 of it, but we asked them to keep 20 for what you call in an option called the catastrophic drawdown deferred option, which we will access if we have a natural disaster or a public health emergency. So it is money is from those two sources that we are able to spend. Plus, of course, what material assistance we have received since the volcanic eruption. This is where sensible public policy help with to strengthen your resilience. Now, I was amused by those who were saying that last year we had elections in November. Person was saying, you get the World Bank money and you want to spend it for election purposes, you get an unfair advantage. But I salted away 20 million of that, left that at the World Bank. I didn't spend it, I could have spent it. US, that's 54 million EC. Because a lot of people think that you need to have a lot of projects and to spend a whole set of money to win elections. But if you're performing on an ongoing basis, people are sensible people. They take cognizance of all of those things.
Yeah, we have the similar experience in Dominica. now, Comrade, at this stage, do you have an estimate of the cost of the damage and the overall impact on the GDP?
Well, the Ministry of Finance, they have been working with a number that everything together, the risk, the properties which are at risk, damage arising from those things directly, and for rebuilding, and then to put agriculture and animal husbandry together, the housing, all the recovery efforts too, that it will take in number close to between 40 and 50 million dollars, 40 and 50% of your GDP. Now, we have a GDP of 2.2 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars. That's why I talk in terms of, it's too early to say, but we talk in terms of hundreds of millions. The built properties which are at risk in the red zone and in the orange zone, already those properties are close to 400 million US dollars. The World Bank sees 383 million. That it doesn't mean that those properties are at risk, that is all the damage, that all of them would be damaged. But the World Bank has a preliminary, very preliminary estimate on the basis of the kinds of diagnostics that they do, say that the direct cost for buildings and to agriculture and animal husbandry, the direct cost to those things would be in excess of 100 million Eastern Caribbean. I mean, 100 million US. That's call that 300 million EC dollars. No, that's in relation to buildings, infrastructure, and the like. But that's very preliminarily. And then, of course, I come back. That doesn't involve all of this costs for maintaining for the humanitarian period. And it doesn't involve what you have to do also beyond the red zone, beyond the orange zone. The very schools in which people are at the moment, and churches, as you will know, is millions of dollars to do repairs and renovations. We have had, fortunately, some of the things which have worked with us in building resilience. I'll just make a few things over the years. You take in the red zone on the northeast, we built the Owe fishing complex and jetty. And they took out people. Without that, 127 persons who are in that area who didn't come out of first and who are then clamoring to come out. They would not have been able to come out because the roads were blocked. We had to send our Coast Guard in afterwards. More than likely, several of them would have suffered. So that's an important facility. The Raboka Bridge, you wouldn't have been able, if you didn't build the Raboka Bridge across that, that large expanse of territory. You have been there, you have seen it. Which would be difficult for people to have passed, which essentially is a barrier historically between the Northeast and the below and to the south of that. And we built that in 2007. And as a consequence of building that, people have built bigger and more beautiful houses up in that area because it's a beautiful scenic area, but that aided the communication. Down on the western side, we built a Chateaubriand jetty. Most of the people on the Caribbean side came out from the Chateaubriand jetty. We built the airport where people are now that the airport is open back, can bring the supplies by air. NEMO itself, the National Emergency Management Organization, was set up by us, by our government. We've put in every school counselors and in the Ministry of Health, the social development, and those counselors are now vital for psychosocial support. Where the World Central Kitchen is using as their headquarters is a big hospitality institute which we had constructed. And it's in the hands of the community college to deal with the culinary arts and the like. That's where their headquarters they are. In addition to they employing 9 caterers to help them. They're operating from there. I visited them today. And World Central Kitchen are doing over 6,000 meals per day at 90 different locations. So, but that hospitality institute is critical in their own operation. So the point I want to make that over the years, and I know that has happened in Dominica too, in the normal course of things, you build these structures for resilience. And right now, we have a big port project on hand, which has started, not physically, but we're doing things for resettlement of certain persons. That port, when it is constructed in another 4 years' time, when it is complete, that again will strengthen resilience in addition to increasing the activities of an economic kind. So it's and these things are happening in a way that when they happen individually, people don't take account of them until they see when something like this takes place. They see the value of all those things, not only individually, but in combination. And it's beautiful to behold. That's what you talk about, resilience, building back better, stronger. You can't do it overnight because you don't have the resources.
It's costly, very costly.
But very costly.
Yeah.
And river defenses, sea defenses. But as the evangelicals say, we build it back that way, day by day, sweet Jesus.
That's right. But just to tell you, within the next 2 weeks, we'll be signing the agreement for the construction of our international airport. I just want to say that on the side to you.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's going to take you what, 5 years, 6 years?
About 4 years, about 4 or 5 years, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes that depends. Sometimes our experiences, the things happen with these huge projects. You have to, and in order to meet the regulators, you have to do certain things which you didn't think about at first. Yeah. So it adds some time and some costs.
Yeah, we're mindful of this. Now, as we understand, the volcano continues to erupt regularly. It happened 3 days ago,
yes.
As you quite correctly indicated. What are you hearing from the scientists, though, as to how long this current situation is likely to last?
They don't know for sure. But the way they speak in terms of about 4 months. But here is the catch. If you can't go back in the area to build for 4 months, to do anything for 4 months, it means that when you're ready to move people out, when they give the all clear, you have to then go and clean up and repair buildings, and in some cases, build houses elsewhere, including perhaps some temporary villages elsewhere, before you can actually build back in those communities themselves in some manner. So this one, the recovery period is going to take much longer than that, obviously. You take children going to school. We have to have the schools as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. We intended to go back to face-to-face from April the 12th, but they erupted. The first set of eruptions took place on April the 9th. Yeah. The Friday before we to go back, that's the end of that for now. And it would be optimistic to get back to the schools until October. Mm-hmm. If you want people to be safe and children to be in order. But fortunately, before the volcano, because of COVID, we had purchased and distributed high quality devices for the community college, all the 5 forms in the secondary schools, in all of the 26 secondary schools. Then in the 61 primary schools, we gave to all the grade 6 classes and to all the grade 5 except those in the city, because we then ran out of, but we have come in about just over a week ago, the remainder of the devices for us to do distance learning and teaching. So we have to give for the remainder of the 10-year-olds, and then to give from 5-year-old to 9-year-olds inclusive. Yeah. And we are about to distribute those. So that is one of the modes. And then we have to do blended education, face-to-face, and these tablets are real good quality. We purchased, people don't realize this, 30,000, Roosevelt. We couldn't get all one time because of procurement challenges to get what you want, given the fact that with COVID, everybody was going for tablets. And people don't think about this. I showed some Americans who have come in, and I showed them a copy of a sample of the tablet which we are giving 5 to 9-year-olds. And I said, the city from which you come, your public schools have these things? And he laughed. I said, no. And I always tell people, and this is not a commentary to criticize anything with the United States of America. I'm not saying that at all, because they're a tremendously advanced, very rich country and the like. But just to indicate the way we as policymakers look at certain things for our people. And in this disaster, I remind people, you take Katrina, that's US a very rich country. We haven't put anybody in a stadium with no beds, no food, no water, like what happened there. We haven't had any looting for food in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines as happened in Katrina. We haven't had any church turn away any poor people as happened in at least one notable case in Katrina. On the other hand, the Christian community, the churches have opened their doors, everybody. The Seventh-day Adventists, for instance, right now as I speak to you, in 9 shelters, they're providing 1,200 meals per day, 600 lunches, 600 dinners. The Salvation Army, they've ramped up their soup kitchen. The Catholic Church, similarly. The Red Cross is organized in delivering 4,000 packages. They haven't rolled it out fully yet for people who are in not those in the shelters, those who are in homes. We have been able, as you did in Dominica, to use our infrastructure and our social solidarity and the goodness of our people to do some things with not a lot of resources, but to help. And our democratic institutions, people must not forget about them. I have to go to Parliament on May the 11th with a supplementary appropriation bill and a supplementary estimate. Because under the law, we cannot spend more than $25 million in any financial year by executive action, that is to say, through special warrants. I don't know what is your limit. Your limit probably not even as much as 25 million. But because we have to spend more than that, I have to go to Parliament to get the approval of Parliament. And in the midst of this, we have to make our democratic institutions work. Because we are a functioning civilization. In Dominica, in Saint Vincent, we are Saint Vincent and Grenadines, we are part of our Caribbean civilization, and we have a tradition of democracy and accountability and transparency, and it is vital that we continue to do with these, even in the midst of this particular challenge, which comes upon the COVID challenge. Other countries, they suspend constitutions. We haven't done that. Suspend go for a state of emergency. We haven't done that. We declare natural disaster under the National Emergency Management Organization law. We have declared a public health emergency, but not a state of emergency. We are not making the extreme in the Constitution the daily diet of our governance. We are using the law as a shield and not as a sword. Because in the management of it, we have to show that we are sticking to our values, our democratic values, our values of openness and accountability and the like. Of course, you would have people who will snipe you on those. But we have to be thankful that in our region, that all of these values are deeply ingrained in successive generation of leaders.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister, as we speak tonight, what would you say is the singular biggest challenge you face right now?
Well, first of all, to feed all those people. The water has come back. Of course, the water is fragile still because another big explosion with a lot of ash can create the difficulties. But at the moment, we have the water issue under the controls, so to speak. Food, we have to feed our people. Then we have to strengthen the hygiene at the various facilities. Obviously, things like portable potties, at least 200 of them would be needed and the septic trucks now, and all the infrastructure required for that. We have the septic lagoons and so forth. That's part of our normal infrastructure dealing with waste. But then COVID. There is a reluctance by people even to test. They're not even talking about the vaccine. We have up to now done just about 13% vaccination. The number of people have questions about the AstraZeneca. The number of people have questions about vaccines in general. And that vaccine hesitance doesn't make any sense. And similarly, the AstraZeneca is safe. The risks are far, far outweighed by the benefits. And we still have to plan to get more vaccines. I'm just going through an agreement for 50,000 treatments of the Sputnik. That's 1 and 2. They cost $1 million US, 1995 US per treatment. 1990 per treatment, sorry, with the 2 vaccines. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, the psychosocial issue, where the longer this goes on, the more people are going to get very frustrated, and it's important that we hold the social solidarity together. The security question. These are the immediate humanitarian issues, and of course, the clearing of the ash with the equipment and how you do it, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's going to be a huge cost, eh?
It'll be a massive cost. Yeah, massive cost.
So you have to be ready for that. Yeah.
Barbados has that too. I mean, a lesser degree, clearly. Yeah. But Barbados also has that. So those are the things. I remember earlier I was telling you about water. Mm-hmm. Well, the water issue has been more or less been resolved. And I say to people in America, though some persons have already gotten large supplies of water and send it, that if you had already organized that before and it comes, well, but it doesn't make sense to send in water from America because we have water in the Caribbean, where it's nearer. Yeah. And it's very expensive to send that by air. And when you send it by boat, it's another 2 weeks. And we have, so people have to be, in fact, I'm telling families that at this stage, the best thing to do is to send money. Because the supermarkets are open, they have a lot of supplies. They're bringing in more supplies. You come into Kingstown. We have cleaned the streets already in Kingstown of the ash in Kingstown. We clear it and going up as close to the red zone on the eastern side and also on the western side. So that we when you come, it's the top 1/3 and the sort of areas just bordering the red zone. My own personal house in the countryside is in the orange zone. It's covered in ash. I haven't gone there. I haven't had the time even to go there. But Eloise got photographs, and it's you know. But food, to recap, food still. The issues of the sanitation, which I just outlined, the shelters, the question of COVID, the cleaning up of the ash, the psychosocial issues, the security issues. And then, of course, we have to begin to think about recovery. But you asked me what are the immediate things.
Yeah.
The next phase.
Yeah. Now, Prime Minister, in the week gone, you mentioned that about just over 600 people expressed interest in relocating overseas. What
The
is
numbers
the
have
current
gone up a
situation?
little bit since.
How many?
The numbers have gone up.
Okay.
The numbers have gone up a little since.
Yeah.
Around 1,000.
1,000. What's the
But-
current situation, though?
Well, what is happening is this. Interestingly, about half of those are from the affected red zones and the marginal areas below the orange zone. People who are outside of the orange zone and the red zone. Many of them are also very frustrated. But clearly the priority is to deal with those evacuees who have friends and family and the like. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance, in the case of Dominica, I think the numbers have gone past 50 already. The last thing I saw, I stand to be corrected. And your Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
That's right, yes.
And sometime within the next week or two, we should be able to facilitate some of those persons.
Well, we're ready to receive them, and once
Yes.
they're finalized, we're ready to receive them.
And as you require, as I tell them, you require in Dominica that they do the PCR test here in Saint Vincent. And when they come there, they quarantine for the particular period of time under your protocols.
Yeah.
And then they're in the society, and then all the generous offer about the children among them, they can get them into schools and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate that.
Yeah, all of the arrangements for school we made. We'll provide them with uniforms and books, and
Yes.
their spaces at the schools. We'll work on these things, and once they're here, we'll certainly take good care of them.
You know, I will tell you, people, as you probably know this, that during the time for Dominica, I myself, I accommodated persons temporarily. I personally, at 2 different locations. And this is a tradition in our Caribbean. And I did the same thing with Montserrat. I had one person nearly a year in an apartment which I own on the compound where I live. And another one was there for a couple of months. Because people, the bulk of the people in Saint Vincent want to to stay and rebuild their country. But it is understandable that some people, they have an option, they would like to exercise it. But the overwhelming majority of people want to stay, and they want to go back into their homes in the red zone because they're thriving communities. Yeah. And in the case of the Northeast and places on the Northwest, it's important for Dominicans to know that these are areas which are held, which are the soul of our country, because they're these places for the Kalinago and the Garifuna.
Yeah.
I want that point to be made too.
I'm aware. Thank you. I'm aware. No, I don't promise you, I don't want to detain you much longer. I have two more questions to you. One has to do with the long-term prospects for the villages closest to the volcano. I know that, the scientists are saying to you 4 or 5 months before we see some normalcy in terms of the eruptions. But obviously, your government has started to look at long-term plans for those communities.
Well, let me address history. In 1902, where 1,600 persons died, and this eruption is more akin to 1902 than to 1979, with the volume of ash. There are 2 communities which are thinly populated on the northwestern side, at Walibu and Larakai. Persons from those communities basically moved out from them because they were just too close for comfort. And those are 2 areas in which you have had pyroclastic flows. But the other places, people occupied since 1902. In 1979, as in 1902, you had internal migration. I had family members who lived in the red zone in 1902 and who moved south in what is now the orange zone and stayed there. Some stayed back in the red zone. And in 1979, there are villages like the near to the Kingston area, Sharps, the Roseau. There's a Roseau in Saint Vincent, and in Glenfair Hall. Those communities have a lot of people who migrated internally, and you will have that again on this occasion. But these are thriving communities with their own history and their own identification, and people will go back to them, and we will rebuild with them. So it's a mixed bag, so to speak. And you can't say, like how some people say, declare those areas a natural disaster area, and you just have agriculture, production, and animal husbandry and some fishing, but people don't live in it. They go in and move out. That's just an impossibility. But there are houses up there in those areas, which the way they are built, they have to be removed. Some of them are close to riverbed sites where the mud flows will come. Interestingly, the village furthest to the north, east, Fancy, has had less damage than the other villages in the red zone, because the soufre is such that there's a part of the mountain range, a huge cliff is between the soufre and Fancy. And Fancy is built under that big mountain range, so to speak. So when the ash went very high, it went out to sea with the wind. And Fancy was not as affected as, say, Owea and Sandy Bay and Orange Hill on the northeastern side. It's very interesting how it played out. But the roads have been damaged. You know, Roosevelt, this volcano, if you see, you would normally associate the moving of big boulders with landslides and those sort of things. The volcano made a whole set of big boulders come down, you know.
And you have to watch this with the rain coming because, and of course, you know, your rivers and your bridges.
That's the point.
Yeah, you know, you run the risk. This is where you have to even preemptively and dredge some of these rivers in preparation, anticipation on the rainy season.
Well, I'll tell you this. Our storms in 2010, 2011, 12, 2013 damaged or destroyed several bridges along the way from my home village in Connery, which is in the orange zone. And I had to rebuild over the last 6 years or so, 5 bridges in that area: Connery, Byra, Montyoung, the Caratal and Basin Hole. And each of them, with the temporary structures you had to put in place, and then the amount of the way the abutments have to be, and we build them higher. Because obviously, before the sensitivity to climate change, the bridges were fairly low. Your people, your predecessors, they had the good sense to build the bridge over the main bridge over Layu River very high. We had to build high ones too, because clearly when the logs come down, and in this case too, when you have the mud flows with a lot of stones up on Soufriere Mountain, when the rains bring them down, you have mud flows. They're going to block up those bridges, which are not as high as these which we have built. And the seismologist told me, the geologist, Professor Robertson, said to me, he said, "Ralph, what you have built there, mudslides are going to test them." It's not an easy route to travel.
Not at all, not at all. No.
Yes. We meet it with optimism and good cheer.
Yeah. Well, are there any special messages you would like to leave for the Dominican people, comrade?
Well, the special message, I reiterate my thanks. I reiterate my gratitude for the solidarity and generosity. And I know they are our brothers and sisters, and we would look for them as they look for us, as we have done in the past. And we will again do from whatever little that we have, if anything adverse was to befall Dominica. And I want you to know, and as you know it well, that I love Dominica. I love Dominicans. I love the Caribbean. I love every country in the Caribbean. Of course, Dominica has a very special place in my heart. Though Eloise was born in Trinidad, and Trinidad has a special place to because my mother was born in Trinidad. Eloise's parents are both Dominicans, and you know they lived at Mount Bruce, and she herself, she carries, in addition to a Vincentian passport, she carries a Dominican passport as the child of Dominicans. So the message is one of love and friendship and solidarity. And once we have that, all little things in between are worked out. And I say to them, treasure what we have. Treasure our blessings. And we must always avoid the vanity of small differences within our countries. Social media tends to amplify small differences. Political parties tend to do that, the competitiveness of our politics. And those things could be very damaging. And above all, we have to avoid modern telecommunications taking away our soul and our spirit. We solve problems. That's how we have built our Caribbean. There are some, however, are interested only in a complaining industry. When anybody calls me now and says to me, you know, I have a complaint to make to you, comrade, about Nemo. I said, there are two things to start off wrong here, there. All of us are Nemo. I am Nemo, you are Nemo. Everybody in the country, especially at a time of natural disaster, we are Nemo. That's the first thing. I said, tell me what is your problem and what you want us to do to help with it. And then I ask you, by the way, you have been going to work and you're being paid. Have you volunteered? Have you volunteered to go to a shelter to help to cook? Have you gone to the shelter? Have you gone to the communications unit to field calls? I said, listen to me, don't complain. So, but what has happened is that a complaining industry has evolved, facilitated by modern telecommunications. But you can't stay in the pavilion. You have to come to the field of play.
That's right.
And let us do things together. That is how it has always been. Nehemiah, the great prophet builder, who rebuilt the city walls around Jerusalem after it had been broken for 112 years. We are metaphorically rebuilding the city walls around our Jerusalem. And Nehemiah did it with unity of his people and a clear purpose. Sanballat and Tobiah of the Ammonites came with all kind of dissension. No. They paid no attention to them. We must not pay attention to the modern day Sanballat and Tobiah of the Ammonites. And when they failed in that way, and they send the message and say, come down to the plains of Ono. They say, no, I'm not coming down to the plains of Ono with you. I'm not going to involve in any old talk with you. If you want, come where I am. We're building the city wall around Jerusalem. And that is the task now, metaphorically, for us to rebuild the city walls around our Jerusalem. In unity and in love.
Indeed, comrade, thank you very much. We stand, as I said, in complete solidarity with you, the entire country of Dominica, and myself personally as Prime Minister. I have appreciated your friendship and the love that you have shown for me and the guidance that you provided to me over the years. And we extend that same love and compassion to you and the wonderful people of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. We call on the international community. We call on the international community to provide all of the support that you need, financial and otherwise. We all know that this volcano has affected you in the most difficult of times, but we have to always ensure that there is a solidarity and the international community, the World Bank, the the Caribbean Development Bank and the many multilateral institutions, and of course, all of the countries which we have diplomatic relations with, they need to step forward and to provide the support that you need. From our experience, you're going to need a lot of financial resources to build homes and to rebuild communities and to build schools and to provide the social support to so many thousands of your citizens who have been impacted directly and indirectly by the eruption of this volcano. And of course, you're contending with COVID-19 and all of the associated challenges which this has brought upon yourself in Saint Vincent Grenadines and all of us in the world. But we'll continue to be there with you. We look forward to hosting our brothers and sisters from Saint Vincent and the Grenadines once all of the necessary administrative issues are cleared. Please convey my sincerest love and to your wife, and I know she had a surgery recently to speedy recovery, and to all the wonderful people in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, and of course to I must say so publicly, to one of my staunchest supporters, your mother-in-law, Mrs. Harris.
Oh, yes.
Very elegant lady, and I miss her very much in Dominica. My thoughts and prayers are always with her.
Well, thank you. In fact, when I leave you now, she'd be in the living room watching TV, and before she goes off tonight, I have to make her favorite drink. Usually, it's a little bit of Demerara rum or Havana Club or something with coconut water. but because of the problem, we're not getting the coconuts now because a lot of them are in the red zone and the orange zone. Yeah. So I have to do it. I have to do it with ginger ale. So I'm going to do my son-in-law business before she goes to bed.
Comrade, God bless you.
Thank you very much, and all the best to the people of Dominica.
Thanks for being here on the program. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening.
Same to you. Good.
Thank you. We'll take a short break and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll take 3. What time is it now? Would have been answered so swiftly.
Vaccine. Under COVID pressure in we country, mentally, socially, economically. Look, we get a blessing rather quickly to bring us back to some kind of normalcy. Yes, you're over 18, take the vaccine. To protect your family, take the vaccine. To safeguard the elderly, take the vaccine. To bring back with festivals, take the vaccine. Take the vaccine, take the vaccine. Need it, take the vaccine, take the vaccine. Need it.
This is a message from Tasha P. and the Health Promotion Unit of the Ministry of Health, Dominica.
All right, welcome back. We'll be with you for a few minutes. I wanted to highlight a few points. One, that, I've had the occasion to extend to the government and people of India our empathy. They're going for a huge challenge with the high rates of infection of COVID-19, and it's a huge challenge for the government there and for the people. And so our thoughts and prayers are with the Prime Minister and the government and people of India. Just recently they were so generous to us in responding to our requests for vaccines, and they were able to not only provide to Dominica but to literally almost every Caribbean country. And we're really saddened by the situation there, and we do hope and pray that there'll be some interventions that would certainly reduce on the number of infections and the deaths, unfortunately, that are taking place there. So we empathize and with the government and people of India. Tomorrow we go to Parliament. There are a number of very important matters before the Parliament. I just highlight a couple of them. One is a resolution for a loan of $67,500,000 from the International Development Association, the World Bank. That is budget support, and I will indicate to the country how we intend to make use of these funds at some point. So we look forward to receiving parliamentary approval for this loan, and once we get parliamentary approval, then the funds will be transferred to us here in Dominica. We also have a supplementary appropriation, seeking parliamentary approval for the supplementary appropriation. There's also a resolution to determine when should parliamentarians begin to get their salaries paid. Some members of parliament made representation to the Speaker of the House of Assembly, indicating that they should have gotten paid the day after the elections. They were current. The two current members of Parliament, the two members of the opposition, and there were two former members of Parliament from the opposition side who made representation, and there was advice given, and the resolution will be put before the Parliament for the Parliament's consideration. And so it's important that the Dominican population pays attention to this resolution that will go before the Parliament tomorrow. And also there's a resolution calling for the removal of the embargo against the people of Cuba. And of course, the United States has placed Cuba on the list of countries which support terrorism, which really is not factual. And we stand in solidarity, as always, with the government of the Republic of Cuba. And so we will be seeking parliamentary approval for this. Now, as you know, from Friday gone, we provided some financial support, income support, to the bus drivers of our country. From all reports, the bus drivers are pretty grateful for that assistance, both the bus drivers and, of course, those taxi operators who provide services to visitors to a country, both at the airport and also the cruise tourists. Now, just to say that this intervention by the government is nothing new. This government is known for its outreach to citizens in distress. As a matter of fact, this is the first administration that has provided any kind of support after any external shock or natural disaster. The first time farmers received funding from the government was when I became the Prime Minister of this country. Outside of farmers who had wind crop insurance, banana farmers that is, but non-banana farmers who had no insurance never got any kind of support or building people's homes. After Hurricane David, people had to go into the forest that was left, and some wood, some planks we got from Guyana, and at the time the government gave it to a few people. People had to rebuild their homes, but we provided support to people to build their homes. During this COVID period, after Erica, after Maria, when the people of Peter Savan were relocated, we provided them with income support. We provided them with a place to stay. We paid the rent for them up until we built homes for them in Bellevue-Chopin. The same thing with fire victims in Silver Lake. We're still paying rent for many of those people. When the trough affected the West Coast, so when we had the Ophelia and affected the West Coast and the northern part of the country, we provided support to residents in Massac and in Canefield and in Jamit and in Maho, who were affected in St. Joseph. Provided them with funds to replace their furniture and their clothing, etc., the appliances. We provided support to businesses, paid for the staff. I mean, for example, a company like Dominica, after Hurricane Maria, recognized the humongous challenge with Dominica faced. We paid for some of its staff. Many private sector entities, we provided income support. During this COVID period again, we've been providing income support to a number of people. Initially it was for 3 months. It had been extended to 1 year. We placed monies at the aid bank. There are many individuals who benefited from these funds at the aid bank, of up to $15,000 at 1% interest. And many people made good use of the support, small business support, support to students in terms of uniforms and books and so forth. So the list goes on where this government is concerned. This government has been a very generous government, but also a responsible government. And in this case, we recognize before this people went and took this unnecessary action, which they were badly advised, we decided to provide them support. And I want to caution people that in no way should anybody link our support to the bus drivers with what these people did on this a few months ago. There was no link to this. I could have taken a strident position and say, well, these people went and blocked the streets and the roads and, hell of them and so forth. But that is not my makeup. That's not my makeup. I recognize as the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, that these people needed some support, and we have reached out to them. So my advice to them is make good use of this money. Use it wisely. Buy your 4 tires. Go and pay your insurance. Go and pay your license, and ensure that you adhere to the laws of the country in terms of the operation of your business. So make good use of it. These funds have been given to you in a very difficult period. So, and of course we'll be reaching out to the vendors. Who provide services to tourists and their tour guides. We recognize that, you've been dramatically affected. My friends there in Waterhaven, who rely exclusively and largely on cruise tourism to survive, I know of the challenges there, and certainly we'll be reaching out to you. And those of you who operate at the Bayfront and the Old Market, we understand this. And this is why, last week, a cruise ship passed in our waters, and people got excited. They thought the cruise ship was being called on Dominica. This can happen, God's willing, in June of this year. But we have to get vaccinated, and it is in our personal and collective interest to get vaccinated. We have vaccines now, and therefore we need to take the vaccines. And again, while COVID is under control and under management, we cannot take anything for granted. We should not take anything for granted. And we have to continue to be on our guard. There's a situation in Anguilla. The government of Anguilla, I believe, managed the COVID-19 pretty well. We're keeping the numbers extremely low. But they now have a number of cases as a result of one person who I've been told came through the back door, and has placed this island in a tailspin, when it was just about to change its protocols, to move towards a greater sense of normalcy. It's an island that depends heavily on tourism, and now they have to go in this lockdown stuff and so on. So let us be mindful that COVID is not gone. The vaccines are important in our fight against COVID-19, and so let us go out and get vaccinated. Many of us have gotten our second shot. There are many who will be getting the second shot this week. So let us do what we have to do. In Vegas on Tuesday, from Tuesday morning, the 270 of you who got the second shot on that day, and back then, you will be required to get the second shot on Tuesday this week. So please go out. We'll provide transportation from Penville and Thibault into Vacas to get the vaccines. And of course, those who have not gotten the first dose, you should go out and get your first dose as well. It's important for all of us. So, all of us. So it's past our time by about 30 minutes, I believe. I will end here just to say have a wonderful evening. Let us go forth and serve our Lord and to serve our country. This is our country. We have to decide whether we want to be constructive or destructive, whether we want to be positive or negative. Our country needs positivism now, and our country needs people who are prepared to build this beautiful country, especially in these very trying and difficult times. As I said earlier tonight, within the next 2 weeks, I will be in a position to sign off on the agreement for the construction of the international airport, and I will be responding to a question in Parliament tomorrow, and I will give some facts as it relates to the international airport for Dominica. God bless you. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening and have a wonderful week.
Hi, my name is Mr. Benji, Cultural Ambassador and lead singer for TK International. COVID-19 has hit my livelihood very hard. No large crowds means no shows. No live performances means no zero. I want to get back to doing what I love, to what you love. Let's get back to 13. I can only get back on stage if we all take the vaccine. Get vaxxed. Mr. Benji said so.